Hello and welcome to Let's Talk with Dr. Shanessa Fenner. I'm your host, of course, Dr. Shanessa Fenner. And today I have a very good friend. Oh my goodness, I've known him since high school. He's wonderful. He's like a little brother to me. He's family. We have Mr. Larry Rivera. Hi Larry, how are you doing?
I'm doing very fine, Shanessa. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for being a part.
I call you Shanessa, but to everybody else, you're Dr. Shanessa Fenner. But I've been knowing you that long. So, it's a blessing to be here. Truly a blessing to be on your show.
Thank you.
And I just want to say, I'm very proud of the steps that you've taken and where you're at today and how you're able to even have a platform for those that's in the community. So it's an honor to be here.
Well, thank you. And it's such a pleasure to have you.
Yes.
Now, Larry, you have an incredible story. I mean, one that you have, faced and endured many challenges. I was able to be, part of one of the challenges that you had, which was a long one. But I want you to just first start off by letting the audience know, by telling your story. Who is Larry Rivera?
Wow. Awesome. Larry Rivera was first born not Larry Rivera. Larry Rivera was born as Larry Thomas Russell Jr. And he was a man who had raised me from the time I was born. That was Larry Thomas Russell Sr. And he was a good father to me. It was just as any other kind of household, they go through separations or whatsoever. I didn't see anybody as the bad guy. And one day he just sat me down, after a separation between himself and my mother, my wonderful mother, by the way. My
Linda?
wonderful mother. I thank
Yes.
my mother. I thank my mother. I thank my mother. And he sat me down and told me that, it'll be the last day I'll see him. And I haven't seen him since. And that was Larry Thomas Russell Sr. And around that time, another man was stepping into my life. And his name was Joe Rivera. And I was around 7, 8 years old. And he stepped into my life and pretty much he picked up, the slack that was left off, and he did such a fine job that I really didn't get upset with my father. I'm talking about a father that I was raised around all my life. And of course, he was in the military and he would leave and go overseas and things of that nature. But I literally, was with him all the time when he would come and I loved him. I remember I looked up to him. And to have that man sit across the table and then tell me that that'll be the last time that I see him, some of my friends would question me about that. Because he would be in the neighborhood, and then he's gone, and some of my friends would question me about that. And then a lot of friends, even to this very day, would say, man, it was amazing how you got through that, because you kind of like just blocked that out. Because he was also involved in other people's lives. Fathers know other children in the neighborhood and things of that nature also. So, and know other people in the family and things of that nature. So, when Joe Rivera stepped in my life, he pretty much just brought, now when I look at it, I see God. God sends people in your life for particular reasons. It's just how you perceive it. And if you choose to get angry and upset at everybody, then you can miss the blessing. So that's kind of how I saw it when my pop came into my life. I called Joe Rivera Pop, and and I think he did a wonderful job. So that's how my name, when about 10 years old or so, I started assuming the name. And my name changed, and of course, my friends was like, you are Larry Russell. They used to call your name Larry. What happened? And I just really wouldn't talk much about it. They just saw it. And so Joe Rivera, is my pop, and he pretty much raised me along with my mother. And my mother made a good choice, and so I'm grateful. So I'm grateful, and so that led me into not seeing some things that was taking place in my own life. Maybe there was some anger as you look back at your life. I'm 43. Shanessa, and I always tell people, I've never been 43 before. You understand? So you're 43, right. So you're looking back, and you're learning now about yourself a little bit that you didn't know before, but you were just going through it. So when I look back a little bit, my pop saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. He saw me fighting all the time. When we were coming up, in our times, we were fighting in the neighborhood, and it would be fists, and you fighting you with your feet or whatever, but you wouldn't try to really hurt or do harm to anybody. If that person failed, you'll let them get back up. And so I would also get in fight. I was a small guy in school, so I also would get in fight at school because my mom would always say, you just won't be quiet, because if somebody say something to me, I'll say something back. So I would get in fights. So my pop decided on my 10th birthday to put me in Taekwondo. And he signed me up with to me, one of the sharpest instructors at that particular time in 1983, here in Fayetteville, North Carolina, off Hope Mills Road at Roland Studio. Miss Myung Mays, a little woman from Korea who is a 9th degree black belt. And when she goes over, to describe her, when she goes over into Korea, it's similar to like Jackie Chan in the United States. She's very popular, she's well known, not for movies or anything, but for producing great fighters. And she was a great fighter in Korea, which says a whole lot. And she was on the men demonstration team, which says a whole lot more for those who don't understand.
Girls rock, baby.
There you go. So, Miss Mays was really nice with her training. And my pop he was so smart to put me in this class. I just want to thank my pop and my mother for putting me in this class, because my mother would make sure I go every time when he was overseas. And Miss Mays trained us very, very thorough and very hard. She used a medicine stick. Today people they'll be on Facebook and somebody will have it on social media or YouTube, or it'll be on your show or something of that nature. They'll be talking about, this woman was standing in, I can see the pictures right now on social media with her standing in an 11-year-old, 12-year-old stomach. Running us behind a car. But you know what she did? She made great fighters. And being young, her first team, she ended up growing to where she took many of us to the Junior Olympics, and many of us won gold medals. I was double gold medalist in one Junior Olympic. I won bronze medals in the Junior Olympics, silver medals in the Junior Olympics. And she did it through a hard training, tough training. And she did not compromise. And when she wanted to be a champion, she became the first female Olympic coach, she really grew into being great. But I learned from that, and it was because she was focused on children. She groomed children from when they were young and made them great. She would take us all around the United States and fight us, and we would win. We'll come back with the big, tall bamboo trophies, and we'll come back with the medals and things of that nature. And I'll be in the newspapers. I'll be in Paraglide, which is a military newspaper. I'll be on the Lou Ross telethon. So, you don't appreciate those things as children necessarily, but as life went on, I wanted to be a veterinarian. From the time I was 5 years old, I always said I wanted to be a doctor. And I graduated from high school. But I didn't graduate from the 12th grade. I graduated from the 11th grade. And
Smarty pants.
I don't know if it was smart. I think I outsmarted my pants. You know what I'm saying? So I'm serious. So, I graduated early. But now I look back and say, was I ready? I've never been 43 before. So, as you get older, you get more humble. You get less judgmental, all right? Because you start seeing your flaws more, and you realize that you're struggling with these flaws year after year after year after year. So it starts humbling you over a period of time. And I wanted to be a veterinarian. I was, my friends were older than me, such as yourself, Patrick Holt, Mike Anderson, Damian Moore, Atiba Bethia, Leroy Pollard. So many of those, people who were friends of mine, and I grew up with them, and I wanted to graduate with them. And I figured out a way and graduated and went to Pembroke at the age of 17 years old. And I wanted to transfer from NC State. They said I had to get a couple more years of experience, which is fine because I graduated early. Wasn't supposed to graduate. In 1990, everybody was not graduating out of the 11th grade. So I was a little ahead of myself. And then I was on a college campus. And at the age of 17 years old, I was made an offer. And that changed my entire life. And I see it as my life, as a young man who, by the time I was 15, I had already trained in the Olympic Training Center, been in Colorado Springs, been to Puerto Rico, fought across the country, and then to be made an offer on a college campus and to be, naive enough to take that offer because you're blinded by money. And that revolutionized my life. And after that, I ended up, by the time I was 18 years old, I had accessory to murder charge, assault with a deadly weapon with intent to kill charge. And then by the time I was 19 years old, I had bank robbery charges, because sometimes you don't know what you do when you get yourself involved in certain things. You don't understand laws of conspiracy. You don't understand, at the age of 17 years old, somebody's making you an offer to commit a crime, And that person who's making you that offer to commit a crime, you know, everybody's not good out here. You understand? And sometimes we raise our children, you know, particularly in my community, you raise your children to be fair, to see no color, to see fairness, to see, you know, to equality, you know, and, you know, we know our generation, what generation we were, you know, after the civil rights, you know, integration. We're that first generation that's going into that wave of things. And like I say, I've never been 43 before. I'm serious. I've never been 43. And you look back and now you see how crack cocaine, you know, came into the black communities. Now you see and you hear about how the guns are showing up into the black communities. This is real. So many people are like, they don't want to talk about this. But it's real. It's in the news. They're talking about it in the news every day. It's in your face. Why not discuss it so that we can prevent the children that are now our children, that we see that are in the school systems? We see what's going on. We see that their chances of making are even slimmer than our chances of making it because of all the things that are stacked against them. So when that took place in my life, you know, that altered my life. And, you know, I went to prison. I mean, I'm, you know, 20 years old. That's 23 years ago.
Yes. And I remember sitting in the courtroom and they read the verdict. I was there. I had driven to Raleigh that day, and we were in the courtroom, and I remember when they read the verdict that day. I was there.
Exactly. That's very true. That's very true. That is very true.
Yes, and I was shocked, amazed, and like, oh my goodness. Yeah.
And I remember when they read that verdict, and I put my hands up on it, and I cried. You know, I was just telling this story earlier today. I tell it to children all the time. You know, because, you know, I never want a child to go through what I went through. I want children to get through, you know, what I went through. Because when you have high aspirations for yourself and big goals for yourself, and then somebody comes and blinds you, which is an adult, you know, and they come and they actually blind you, you know, and I blame myself. I blame no one. I'm not angry at anybody, but I have a right to tell my story. That's the thing. Guess what? They helped create my story. So I'm going to make sure that I tell my story. And that's what I tell the children all the time. Don't you think I have a right to tell you my story? Don't you think that, you know, isn't it only fair that I tell you the truth about my story? But it's like my story is the taboo story. You understand? Because, oh man, if you say this about what's going on, then you know, the enemy's going to rear his ugly head at you. Well, guess what? So what? Let's learn history. Look in history. What happened to Martin Luther King? What happened to Malcolm X? What happened to all our great leaders, Assata Shakur? What happened to, you know, Angela Davis? Angela Davis has been to this school. It's an honor to be here at Fayetteville State University. What happened to these people? You know, they had an enemy. But guess what? They kept teaching, and many of them are still teaching today. And that's what I feel like, you know, it's an honor to be alive. You ask who is Larry Rivera? Larry Rivera is grateful to be alive, to be able to talk to the next child. I'm so inspired to get in front of children and talk to them, to share with them my story. So which either end of the spectrum you could be on. You can be the bad guy that's enticing a young child to sell drugs or to sell guns in the community. You can be that person on a college campus that's recruiting people. You could be that person. Or you possibly could also be the person that took the offer and your whole life because they saw you as bright, they saw you as someone intelligent, and they thought that you can help carry out something to make them money, but you end up being the one to truly suffer, and then your community suffers.
Okay. So when you talk to the young black male right now as an older black male, what are some of the things that you say to them, Larry, so that they don't end up making the decisions that you made and end up going down the, you know, the path that you did?
One of the first things I like to try to make clear to them, I try to make their life relevant to them. Because a lot of people, when they're dealing with a lot of children, particularly black children, all right, that life is not truly, what's happening in the world is really not relevant to them because they are more caught up onto the reality TVs and the, you know, the music. And they believe what they're hearing to truly be the truth, you know. So one of the things I make it very clear to them is that you're living right now. And the moment you were born on this planet Earth, the moment you were born, you start facing death. And I try to let them, I try to relate it to, because a lot of them like games, whether it's basketball, football, whether it's soccer, whether it's, swimming, they like, whether it's golf, tennis, they like games, or whether it's the video games, or whether it's the, social media. I try to let them know that your life, you get one. And that's it, buddy. Has anybody ever made it that clear to you, just to tell you, you can go ahead and be the greatest you want to be, or you can go ahead and you can just give up. Which one are you going to do? And I'm telling you, most of the times, I can't say the statistics, the exact number. I'm just saying, but it's successful. And then I start sharing with them my story. And I think I'm able to, I don't think it's just that I talk to them. I don't think that it's just my story. I think they know that I mean what I'm saying, that, okay, here's a person who grabbed my attention. And why is he so passionate about wanting to tell me this story? And I'm talking about 5-year-olds. I took 5-year-olds and I took 6-year-olds. I took 13-year-olds to go see Birth of a Nation. You see, I do things with children that many people think are taboo. Like I took about 20 children with me to the 20th anniversary to the Million Man March, the Justice or Else. Took them on a bus, and parents were letting their children come. But that's taboo. And some people, they're like, oh, they're gonna have problems. You can't, these are high school students. Man, we didn't have any problems out of them. We underestimate how great the minds our children have. They're so brilliant, but we expose them to a lot of the wrong things. We should have a community that just tries to protect their little innocent minds and just try to feed them as much knowledge as we possibly can, so we can create genius. If this is proven that if a little child is raised from the time it's a baby, it can grow up speaking 7, 8 languages. But it's so difficult for me right now to go out there. I wouldn't even take on that challenge to try to go speak 7 more languages and learn them right now. That'd take me my lifetime. But you can take a little child. So what do I say to them? I make it very clear to them that they're great. I don't care what titles they give you or they assign to you. It doesn't matter to me. You know what I'm saying? I see greatness in you. Because guess what? Here I was, people saw greatness in me and just thought I was going to be this veterinarian or this doctor one day. And I ended up in the hole of a prison. That's about as low as you can possibly go outside of being buried, being in the grave. In the hole, So, that humbled me. That humbled me. And a lot of people don't understand that is when you speak the truth, you're not speaking it because you're arrogant. You're speaking it because, it really made you free, and you want to offer that same mental freedom to the children. And I don't see them as free. I don't see the schools doing this. I'm just being honest. All the way up through the colleges. I don't see it, everywhere it should be. Let's put it like that. Because it is some areas. But it's like there's so many restrictions. You can make a child so great as a gymnast, but you know how much they train to be a gymnast?
A lot.
Those little children, if the camera was on them all the time, you would see child abuse, according to what people say. Oh, you're working them too hard. That's too many hours. But to produce that greatness that can flip across that can get on that bar, one of us go there and try to get on that bar and twirl one time. How do you do this? It is through intelligence, it's through greatness, it's through hard work, it's through pain. But I don't see the schools, it's like let them do what they want to do, all the restrictions are off of them, You can't say this to them, you can't put your hand on the shoulder this way, you can't tell, you can't challenge the one. When I was coming up, listen, not saying that when I came up was better education, I'm just saying that it seemed like they took a lot of the good things out too. It wasn't the best, but it seemed like they took a lot of the good things out. And the good things is discipline. You can't even challenge a child right now to say, when I was coming up, make a child read. Oh no. If a child know that I might get called on tomorrow to read, oh my goodness, Miss Rivera gonna call me out, it's gonna embarrass me. That's not bullying. That's gonna make that child go home. If you start them early enough, and they're gonna read. Because they know when they come, they might get called out.
That's right.
But when you take that out of the school, when you take inside of sports, when you saying a little 5-year-olds playing soccer, nobody wins. What? In the real world, there's a win and there's a lose. Why are we waiting for them to turn 18 years old before we teach them about there's a win and there's a lose.
That's right.
You know, so I'm all in. You know, that's kind of what I say all the time. I'm all in because, listen, I feel like I'm not even supposed to be alive anyways. That's when you look at my life and I look at my life and I look at where I went and where I came from, you know, and what I faced, talking like this in prison, you know. Listen, I'm grateful to the point to where even there was an article written when I met Jesse Jackson, and we had an exchange, you know, because I pretty much disagreed, you know, with them. But what's wrong with that? What is wrong with that? But it in prison now, you know, and so the media was there and they wanted to know what went on, and it came out in the newspaper. That's how I was, you know. So when people meet me out here, they say, "Man, Larry talking won't stop. You know, he'll keep going. Man, you're so passionate." You're right. But there's times when I'm quiet too. You know, when I'm doing a lot of studying, I use a lot of my time when I'm not seeing, I'm studying. I'm with children, then I'm trying to get some peace of mind. You know, I'm 43. This happened when I was 17, 18, 19. I say I saw, you know what I'm saying, with my own two eyes, all right? Children. We were children. Die. You understand? So you talk about post-traumatic stress as far as with the military, but I don't feel like I suffer like that. But I feel like that it has affected me, of course. But what I do, how I felt, why I feel like I overcome what I've seen and what I witnessed, why there's no fear, is because I think about the children. I think about, man, I'm obligated to let the children know what's really going on. If people hate me for telling the truth and telling my story, prove my story wrong. I have witnesses. There's people I'm still friends with who was incarcerated with me, who was like yourself, who was a good friend of mine when I was in high school. I hope I wasn't a bad guy. You know what I'm saying? I hope I was a good person. I hope I was a respectable person looking back. And I think about social media, how children today are not being taught how to use it to investigate, to get knowledge. But every time you're even searching through there, something will pop up. And I can imagine a child will see this picture. What would a child do? And then click on that picture and then get drawn into an underworld. There's a new underworld now. You know, at one time it was prison, it was drugs, it was guns, it was gangs and things of that nature. But there's another underworld. And so when I talk to children, I try to let them know all the traps that are set up there, out there for you. They are real. And don't think that you're 7 years old and something tragic can't happen to you. It can.
Yes, it can. I know that I have watched you do a lot of growing.
Wow.
I remember coming to visit you in Butner.
That's right.
Because I remember at the time I was living in Durham.
That's right.
Because I, of course, attended North Carolina Central and
That's
graduated, and I became a teacher, lived in
right.
Durham for a while, and I remember I would travel to Butner to visit. And I remember coming to visit you one time, and you had a black eye. Remember that?
That's right.
You had a black eye, and
That's
I was
right.
like, Larry, what in the world happened? You
That's
know?
right.
And I was just so like shocked, and I just couldn't believe that the Larry that I knew in high school was now sitting in prison in Butner with a black eye. Okay, but I've seen you grow, I've seen you progress. I mean, you've turned into something that's absolutely wonderful. You have
Wow.
a testimony to tell. I want you to talk a little bit about your school and your
Wow.
babies in it at this time.
Well, when we talk about school, when I first came out of prison, I was in a halfway house. And when I was in the halfway house, I wanted to go speak at Spring Lake Middle School. A principal by the name of Anita Page invited me. And I went back to the halfway house, and the halfway house told me, you know, no, you can't go speak at the school. Well, all right. You know, now that's so many years ago now, you know, and but I left anyways, and I went and spoke at the Spring Lake Middle School. And right then when I spoke at that school, that was probably like February of 2002. And right then when I spoke at that school, I knew that's what I was supposed to be doing. I already said, I said it to the judge, you know, you will have my body, but I'll never give you my mind. I meant that. I meant that. I didn't quite understand how I got into the situation, but I wanted to figure out what just happened to my life just that quick. And I mean, just a matter of a year, you know, that quick. Months, really. Matter of months, my life just started tumbling.
Yes, it did.
So when I spoke at that school, I knew right then that was my passion. But also, at that time, I had met somebody who was on a car dealership, and he was telling me about selling cars and things of that nature, and I was like, okay, maybe I can become a businessman and then open up my own school. That's how I can finance my own school. And ended up opening up a car dealership, However, the economy got crushed, and you know, I never been 43 before. I look back, I'm serious. I mean, I'm literally thinking this right now, just replaying all this.
And that was A&G Auto.
A&G Auto Sales, that's right. And opened up, and the economy just wouldn't allow me to survive. So I had to humbly bow out. And I've just been blessed from that very time, you know, my wife, for her to come in my life. You know, she wanted to be a school teacher, and she graduated with a bachelor's degree in science, biology, and a minor in mathematics. So I met her, and she wanted to be a teacher, and this was right when the car dealership was closing and things of that nature. And she was just we were friends. She was just a good friend to bounce, you know, how to reach. She was literally teaching me, you know, things about how to be more effective with children. And I started receiving that, and then I started, you know, years later decided to go back and speak into the school. I said, you know what? I was in the car business, you know, maybe I should go back to the school. Let's go where my heart is at. And then one of those first schools that I started speaking back in was E.E. Smith. And I went to E.E. Smith. Again, I had spoke to schools before then, but it was a grace period, and started speaking there. And just started saying in my mind, you know, man, I would love to be able to teach, you know, my own group of children, because when I was coming up, you have a principal for 10 years. You have a principal for 15 years, 20 years, maybe.
Yes.
All right. Now you have a principal that's 1 or 2 years. A principal come in and can bring good change to a school and work magic on a failing system, but just knows how to make this thing work. And this good principal can come in and just start working this magic, and all of a sudden that principal's made an offer. And it's a higher position, but guess what? It's further away from the children. And it's like, you know, when you look at Birth of a Nation, you see how they pluck ones out and put them in the house and put them in certain areas of, you know, expertise, and they chose Nat to be the preacher. And so it's the same way now. You get these great, you know, principals, and then they get plucked out and they be made go in administrative positions, and now no longer, you know what I'm saying, are they around the children? And then you go and you replace it with another principal who comes in with a whole new regime, new people, new everything. It's a new party. All right, you got people quitting. You understand? No, this is I've witnessed this. You know,
Oh, yeah.
You got people quitting. You got people upset. You got a whole new team coming in. People getting positions. All along, people forgetting that it's all these children up in here. So after seeing this over and over and over again, I've truly, truly decided I want to have my own school. So Bright Young Minds Academy is really my wife's brainchild. And I support it with our organization, our nonprofit organization, Project Second Chance, and you know, and we've been doing, you know, camps and things of that nature for years, and then finally, you know, I want to give also a shout out to Miss Catherine G. Johnson.
Okay.
Hidden Figures, the movie that's coming out. Very sharp sister. You know, I want to give a shout out to all the sisters out there. You know, maybe another show I would love to express just the power of sisters, man. The power of sisters. And Miss Catherine G. Johnson, they don't tell you about, you know, that it took somebody to do the mathematics in her brain and writing it down to get them on the moon, to land on the moon. And people don't understand all the mathematics that goes in there. And there was a black woman, Miss Catherine G. Johnson. And a movie's coming out real soon called Hidden Figures, starring Taraji P. Henson. So I'm excited because she first came into Fayetteville, and there's a Catherine G. Johnson Day. March 3rd of every year is Catherine G. Johnson Day. So I want to give a shout out also to Miss Catherine G. Johnson, you know, another powerful sister.
Okay. Well, Larry, our time is going away. Just
Wow.
funny how time flies when you're
Yes,
having a good time.
yes.
But I want to thank you. Of course, I wish you much success with your
Thank you,
school.
Shanessa. Thank you.
And I know you will do well. All
Thank
right.
you.
And viewing audience, thank you for tuning in to Let's Talk with Dr. Shanessa Fenner. Bye-bye.
Hypnotized, familiar stranger, wait, hold up, don't run, I don't